we are going to be talking about a topic that's very, very near and dear to my heart. It's been a very big part of my life and definitely very integral to the last 4 to 5 years. But this is a topic that is universal. So it really touches everybody in this room because at one point in our lives, we were all students. And even today, you might have brothers, sisters, sons or daughters that are learning in some shape or form. So education is going to be the topic of the next 2 sessions. My one is going to be a keynote, and then Ayman is going to do a panel on education. And specifically, what we're going to be talking about today is education technology. But before I get into it, and before I talk about the details, I wanted to give a bit of context as to how I ended up here. So why am I here? And before a startup founder, I also had a life. So I'm going to quickly touch on. So as recent as 2021, this is sort of the financial district in London. That's Canary Wharf. And I spent almost a good part of 12 years in those 2 buildings in Barclays and HSBC. So 10 years in Barclays, in many different floors in that building, doing many different things. And 2 years in HSBC, where I was a director in their private bank. But essentially, I just gave investment advice to entrepreneurs who were very successful, and in a funny way, they advised me about what entrepreneurship really was. So what I found out from them was entrepreneurship wasn't really just about taking risks. It was following your dreams and passions and ambitions. And I realized that when I went to the UK for university, it was meant to be for 4 years. So I was brought up in Bangladesh, and I spent 4 years in the UK, and I realized that that had turned into 16. So when my son was born in 2018, I decided that it was now or never. Like, if I was going to follow my ambitions to come back to Bangladesh and try and build something worthwhile with social impact, something that I was passionate about, it had to be now. So as any finance guy would do, what I started doing was looking at the numbers. So for those of you who have been in other rooms and have been in the sessions today, you would have found out the most important thing about today's event. Bangladesh is the best kept secret in the world. We do a terrible job marketing ourselves globally. These numbers behind us is the annual GDP growth rate for the last 10 years from the World Bank. We are one of the fastest growing economies in the world. We're growing faster than India, Vietnam, Indonesia, you name it. But importantly, we have a $455 billion GDP. And if you divide that by the number of people, that's $2,600 per person. Compare that with India, $2,700 per person. So we're not too far away. The other statistic that I started looking at, which was very interesting and something that you don't know as, when you're sort of away from the country for 16 years, right? Is that we have a humongous population, 172 million people. Now put that into perspective. That's the 8th most populous country in the world. According to a Boston Consulting Group report, I met somebody from BCG today, so I don't know if they're in the room, but according to that report, by 2030, this is going to be the 9th largest consumer market in the world. And that's because of the 2 things we talked about, the population size and the economic growth rates. But all of these numbers weren't the ones that really drove education home. So the next statistic is the most important one. How many of you in the room know what percentage of that population is below the age of 25? Any guesses?
60.
Oh, okay, that's too much. 50%. 50%. So 85 million people are below the age of 25. What I term as the learning age population, what economists term as the demographic dividend, but essentially, this is the youth. A youth that is increasingly more aspirational, ambitious, and digitally savvy. This is the future of our country, and this is our greatest asset. So I thought, if we were to empower our greatest asset, what better way to do it than with education, and an enhanced education? So when we think about education today, these are the 3 numbers. Of the 85 million, there's 41 million students across primary, secondary, and tertiary. There are 1.2 million teachers in 160,000 schools. But the most important thing that we all know is that education in Bangladesh is broken. It has been for some time. And this isn't a problem. This problem exists because we're trying to solve a problem that you can't solve. Fundamentally, traditional methods cannot solve the issue that we have. On one side, you have this 85 million people, a huge demand. On the other side, the supply side. How do you create enough qualified teachers? How do you get enough infrastructure into classrooms? How do you get quality learning materials? We fundamentally don't have enough resources in our country. The entire education budget is only 1.6% of our GDP. Let's put that into perspective again. The UN says that the minimum budget should be 4 to 6% for an economy that's growing at our pace. So we don't have the resources to solve for this. And because the public purse is so small, there's a shadow education system. It's a private shadow education system of private tutors that are effectively spread across the country. And because they're spread across the country and pricing themselves, they're actually unaffordable to most. So there is an inequality that's being created. And it doesn't stop there. There's a huge issue with access. There's a big rural-urban divide. So the people in urban centers benefit from the economic migration of all the best talent. The best teachers are migrating to the centers, but 2/3 of the student population live in rural Bangladesh. That's 75%. And all of this came to a head in July 2024. The student uprising started with a protest around job quotas. Essentially, this was a symptom of a bigger problem. A problem that the youth were disillusioned, that they didn't have a voice, that they didn't feel like they were being given the opportunity or the access to access those opportunities. And essentially, we still have this problem today. The ILO says 16% is our youth unemployment rate. These are official figures. I'm pretty sure it's more than that. So the question is, how do we solve it? Education technology is fundamentally going to be the great equalizer. Technology needs to be embedded into every part of our education infrastructure. And at a basic level, at a fundamental level, what education technology is, it's a new type of architecture, one that allows us to really rethink how do we scale quality education. It harnesses the power of the internet. It uses digital tools like smartphones, tablets, smart TVs, and it disseminates access to quality education at scale, creating efficiency and impact. Now, those are lots of buzzwords. What does it actually mean? What is EdTech? We have many companies in the world doing amazing things with EdTech. We have amazing companies in Bangladesh doing great things with EdTech. But I'm going to talk about a few examples that we're using at Shikho, just to bring this to life. And this is just a few of them. So at Shikho, our main sort of product at the moment is geared towards learners. And we have a smartphone application that uses the internet to effectively remove barriers to geography and remove barriers for affordability. And we do that by bringing the best teachers in the country onto that mobile phone. And what do I mean by the best teachers? These are teachers that have 10 years of experience, that went to the right schools, colleges, universities. A lot of them are civil servants who've passed the most competitive civil service exam. Some of them work in the Bangladesh Bank, they're magistrates, they're even in the police administration. So these are aspirational figures that are teaching children all across the country. So think of a remote village, think of a remote island. Those children who would never be able to access those teachers can access that anytime, anywhere, at a fraction of the cost. So that's the first point. We are solving for access. EdTech solves for access. The second point, which is equally important and something that isn't appreciated, technology can effectively enhance our offline experience. How do we do that? Through personalization. Now, it sounds like another buzzword, but effectively, we have built at Shikho and some of the other EdTechs customized technology from the ground up. It's bespoke, it's built in Bangladesh, and it's built for the Bangladeshi national curriculum and students. And what it allows us to do is collect data for those students so we can personalize their entire experience. So what videos you watched, what videos you haven't watched, what type of testing do you do, which subjects are you good at, bad at, and we already have a recommendation engine to guide the student into different ways. So this is what we call personalization. And for those of us who haven't been watching the news for the last 2 years, I don't know whose this is, but artificial intelligence is coming, it's coming fast, it's already here, and it's going to change your world. It's definitely going to change Bangladesh, and education will fundamentally change because of the advent of AI. And what this means is the large language models that we hear about today, the foundational models that we talk about, all of this will be commoditized to the point where the real value will rise in the application layer. What do I mean by application layer? Exactly what we're doing. Effectively, you'll be able to take AI and you'll be able to build use cases specific to problems that the user needs. So we've been working at this at Shikho for the last year, both for students and for teachers. If I give you an example of what we've already released, for Shikho AI, we have a doubt solver. So a student can now literally write down a problem, take a picture, put it into Shikho AI, and the AI will give them national curriculum aligned Bangla answers step by step. Now that is personalization at scale, and it is happening today, and it is gonna go faster. But we don't want to stop at students. Students were our first partners. We want all the ecosystem players. If you're a teacher, my mother who sat here has been a teacher for 40 years almost. Maybe, sorry, it's too much. Sorry, 30. I've given you a rate, I'm sorry. So 30 years, a lot of her time is spent with administration, right? So she checks, she does a lot of grading, there's a lot of lesson planning, there's a lot of curriculum building. All of that can be done with the press of a button. That's effectively what AI can do today. So when we started in 2021, and I remember this, and I'm looking at Ayman too, we were all there at the same time, right? EdTech was a very new phenomenon, right? Platform-driven stuff was a new phenomenon. We were building our stuff, and a lot of the VCs at the time who had funded us asked me, is there a digital demand for education? This is a map of all our users. The yellow dots are pretty much the map of Bangladesh. We had 90,000 users in 2021, and you can see that they're evenly spread out across the country. In 2024, we have 2.5 million registered users. But the crucial bit is, this is everywhere, right? You can see that is literally the map of Bangladesh. And it's cool to see the yellow dots, but I wanted to put a human face on this because we came across a story that really inspired us. The human face, so here are 4 students of Shikho, right? And they're from different parts of the country. So you have a student from Shondip, a remote island. You have somebody from Sylhet and Hobiganj, Bandarban. But the one I want to talk about is Potuakhali Borishal. That's Alamin in the middle. So those yellow dots are real people. And Alamin's story is one of the stories that really touched our hearts. So he comes from an underprivileged background. He comes from a remote village in Borishal. His father runs a small restaurant to try and support his 4 other siblings. Alamin wanted to become a doctor because his mother has illnesses and his father can't afford those bills. But Alamin couldn't go to school, so he supported his father in that restaurant. And from grade 9, class 9, he started using Shikho. So 9, 10, 11, 12, and in this year's medical admission exam in 2025, he stood 117th and got into Dhaka Medical College. He is now on his way to become a doctor. Now, this is a story that really, really reshaped the way we think about Shikho, because before I used to use this catchphrase, Shikho's mission is going to be democratizing access to high-quality education. It sounds great on paper, but it's terrible, really. But what I've realized now is what we are doing is actually allowing the youth to dream bigger, to dream bolder. We are in the business of dreams, not just Alamin's, but his families, his livelihoods are dependent on access to education, because some of the teachers on the app that do biology are all for Dhaka Medical College. Imagine in Borishal, in that Potuakhali Gram, nobody is from Dhaka Medical College. The ability for him to have a role model is so important because you can only achieve things you feel are real. So at the moment, we've focused a lot of our time in the EdTech industry on the learners. But where we are at the moment in terms of an industry is we are mature enough that we have technology that can power effectively national policy. What is the national policy, you might ask? In 2030, we want to achieve the SDG goals, one of which is SDG 4, equitable education for all and lifelong learning. So one of the things that we think we can do right now without building anything extra, for the last 4 years, we've been investing into this. We've been figuring out the problems. And for teachers, we have digital tools. For institutions, we have learning management systems. And of course, for policymaking, we have a lot of data that can help with resource allocation. But these problems aren't just Bangladeshi problems. For the investors in the room, I'm going to refocus my energy now, because this one's sort of geared towards you. India, right, is very close by. I went to a summit recently at ASU GSV. It's a big summit that they do in Delhi. And I met actually all of these founders, which was great. Physicswala is in test prep, Upgrad is in university, Lead is a school SaaS. They're all billion-dollar plus companies. They're near profitable, if not profitable. But the main point is they're just ahead of us, right? Why is it that India is ahead of us? Now, here comes the real reason why we're having an investment summit. India last year, although that our GDP per capita were similar, venture capital investment was 41 times. Let's put that into perspective. For one human being in Bangladesh, we got 20 cents of venture capital. In India, that was $8.30. So it is significantly more than what we're doing. For EdTech specifically, the number is even better. 667 times is what Indian EdTech have raised in a lifetime. 12 billion versus our 18 million. And Indonesia has done 363. So I don't know if I have enough investors in the room, but hopefully the ones that are here, what I would like to say is, this is just a matter of time. And without risk capital, I don't think entrepreneurs can really thrive in an innovation system. So all innovation requires risk. All risk requires a certain type of capital. That is what we term as venture capital. Now, for the investors that didn't show up, they're going to miss my, the giveaway, right? I'm not biased at all, but this is my thesis. Bangladeshi EdTech will emerge as the #1 consumer internet sector in this country. And I'll tell you why I'm not biased. We have one of the largest total addressable markets. Right? 85 million people. That is a big market. The other thing is, that's just Bangladesh. We can go abroad, right? At some point, we will be thinking about Bengalis outside of Bangladesh. It's definitely part of Shikho's plans in the long term. But the market in Bangladesh is big enough. The second point is, education is a necessity. Education is not a convenience. If any of you have South Asian parents, not even Bangladeshi parents, South Asian parents, you will know how painful it is to grow up in a South Asian household about education. But forget that. Education is still the most important factor for social mobility. It decides who your friends are. It decides who your life partner is in many ways. So if you think about it, the macroeconomic tailwinds will effectively mean that eventually, as the middle class become more aspirational, that education technology will be closer to that $16 billion market. So the entire education market today is $16 billion. The private education market is roughly $8 billion. The private tuition market is $2 billion. The question to investors is, do you believe that education and technology are going to be two words in 10 years' time? No. It's the same word. This is the same thing. Technology is going to be everywhere. If you haven't figured that out, you're living under a rock. So the investors need to understand that this is not an if, it is a when. And hopefully with your help, that when can be sooner. So this is my summary of the talk, really. For the last 4 years, education technology companies in Bangladesh have spent a lot of time doing the real hard work, building the foundations, understanding the pain points, creating solutions, and we're now at a point where we can start working with education institutions. If they want to scale their access, we can take them online. If they want to get more efficient, we have learning management systems. If they want to empower their teachers, we have tools. For a lot of the time, we've really scaled EdTech, because you can see those dots and we have the impact at scale. But from a government policymaking perspective, there are still lots of friction points. The first thing that I would say is we still don't treat internet as critical infrastructure. The internet in today's day and age is as important as roads and highways, if not more so. So how do we get internet into classrooms? How does every classroom have Wi-Fi, cheaper mobile internet? How do they have smart TVs, tablets? How does a user in a village actually have cheaper access to mobile data? Maybe through subsidies. Maybe education as a critical service is subsidized. So there are many things that we can do to really move the needle and really get us going. And if I haven't labored the point for investors yet, I think the main piece that we're missing today is venture investment. So Bangladesh is one of the last digital frontiers. I truly believe that. And because of the macro tailwinds, we will eventually create commercial outcomes from these social initiatives. And specifically around education, we have a real opportunity because this is an inevitability. And we can't solve for the demand-supply mismatch without EdTech. But if all four of those elements come together and we create a symbiotic relationship, this is the perfect time. No time has been better. At one side, you have technology and artificial intelligence really accelerating everything that we've done before. On the other side, we have a reform agenda, thinking about the future, about the youth, about the economy. And if you bring those two together, we can really leapfrog traditional development cycles. We can shortcut the system, rewrite the books, and actually create an education system that empowers the youth. But not just empowers them, it allows them to be part of the modern economy in the future. So my final point, and this is, I promise, the final point, is that EdTech companies and EdTech industry in Bangladesh has to stand on the shoulders of giants before us. We need the support, we need the ecosystem, because if we can come together, now is the perfect time that we can create more Alamins who can dream bigger, dream bolder, and by doing so, we can create a future that is economically prosperous, but a Bangladesh that we've all dreamt of. Thank you.